Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Rona, Just Statewide News Service, and jbiztechvalley.com.
Well, Rabbi, I got to tell you, we have another assemblyman who has not been, with a guest as our guest today, who has not been on the show yet, Steve Cymbrowitz, who's near my hometown, where I grew up in Brooklyn, and you're in Brighton Beach area?
Yes, well, first it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. Yes, I take in Brighton Beach, Manhattan Beach, Sheepshead Bay, Midwood.
You have a lot of Russian, I always say when Brighton Beach, they always say the Russian Jews, when they came over in 1990, when the Russian government let them out, that Brighton Beach is like the Russian center of activity.
Well, it is. And I was working in Brighton Beach from the early 1970s, and worked at the Shorefront Y in the 1980s as the program director. And it was my job to welcome our new immigrants and provide programming for them, which was pretty amazing, working with them and UJA Federation to make sure that they had housing and everything that they needed to start a new life.
That was a big job because there were thousands probably.
But that's how we got to know them all.
It was wonderful. It was they saved the community. It was just a new beginning for a Brighton Beach that was getting old.
Memoirs, Brighton Beach memoirs.
It was a wonderful time.
I wanted to tell you a story that I was just recalling to someone else about Mario Cuomo when he went to Brighton Beach to speak to a senior group when he was running for mayor of New York City. Goes back a ways. And he said, he talked about the death penalty, and they were all in favor of it, and he was against the death penalty, and they just about drummed him out of the room.
Yes.
And he went walking with his aide, Fabian Palomino, along Sheepshead Bay and Emmons Avenue, and really dejected, saying he's never going to win, it's never going to happen. And all of a sudden, this little old lady comes up to him and goes, Mario, oh, I love you, Mario. Oh, I've been following you and, in your career and everything, and you're just terrific, and I'm voting for you, and I think you're wonderful. And he was so happy. It was lifted him up so much that he wanted to pick her up and kiss her. And then she says, Mario Biaggi, I love you.
Very good.
And then he says he wanted to throw her into the bay.
Yeah, but it was an interesting community. You had the old socialists who were there from the 1920s on. And those were, who became the seniors who did not welcome the new Russian immigrants with welcoming arms.
Really, it's interesting.
Yeah, it was
an
interesting
to help
time.
Integrate them.
So that was part of my job of getting them to be together.
Now, a lot of your background, Steve, is in housing. I mean, you were the Director of Housing and Community Development for Metropolitan New York Coordinating Council on Jewish Poverty. It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
And like
it's easy to say Met Council. Yes.
Right, Met Council. Right. Is that Willie Rapfogel's group?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So you knew Willie, you knew...
Yeah, I came in, I was working there when David Cohn, Rabbi David Cohn, was the executive director. And I left pretty soon after Willie came on board to work for Mayor Giuliani.
Well, I'm just saying, with the trouble that Willie Rapfogel got into, I was going to ask you if you knew him well enough, but maybe not. I didn't, if you were just crossing.
Yeah, but we all do Willie. And he's someone who I worked with very closely, whether I was at Met Council or when I was in the city. I spent good amount of time at HPD.
I know you were in housing, and maybe that's many years ago, but housing's such a big issue. I know just from the grassroots, maybe it doesn't make headlines, but just it's so expensive to live. And it was a joke because, I'm up here and I take people to the Rebbe 770 Eastern Parkway. You're talking, even though I say I'm 29 years old, but my white beard doesn't attune to that. In any case, Dad, I'd say, come to the Rebbe. Rabbi, Brooklyn, I'm so scared. What are you doing to me? And now I laugh because, you can't, it's like $1 million house.
That's
can't
cheap.
Even,
brownstones in the Crown Heights, Bed-Stuy areas have gone up close to $2 million. It's an amazing thing that's occurred, and a lot has to do with the previous mayor. I give a lot of credit to the past borough president. Marty Markowitz was just absolutely great for the borough. And I believe that our mayor now understands the importance of housing.
Well, he's from
has
Brooklyn
made-
also.
Yes,
So
and,
he knows that.
and he's made housing a big issue.
Now, were you on the Assembly Housing Committee?
Yes, I was.
But you're not now.
No, that's correct.
Why did you step off?
Well, when I was named by Speaker Silver 4 years ago as the chair of the Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Committee, it was at the same time, the committee met at the same time that the Housing Committee met.
So you had a choice of one or the other.
Well,
Either
and-
being the chairman or not.
Yes.
Right, so chairman gets an extra
Yes.
stipend, which,
Yeah.
hey, that's,
Yeah.
And plus, well, let's talk about the chair of Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Committee. One of your big passions to combat is the prescription painkiller epidemic.
Yes.
So tell us what
Well,
you're doing to combat
what
that.
what we are living through right now is the fact that we have thousands of young people dying from prescription drugs.
How's
And I am talking about, you have young kids in every single community, the Orthodox Jewish community, the Sephardic community, the Russian community, the Muslim community. What happens is the kids are finding prescription pills in their parents' medicine cabinets because you and I had a tooth pulled and our dentist gave us 90 pills of Percocet or something.
Or hydrocodone or something.
Whatever it
yeah.
is, it was in the medicine cabinet, and kids start taking it, and they like it. They like it, so they keep taking it, and then they go out and buy it on the street, and it's become so expensive that then to pay $25 for a small pill, kids can't afford anymore, no matter how rich their parents are. So it's much easier for them now to use heroin. So you have, believe it or not, on a weekly basis, Jewish kids, Russian kids, Sephardic kids who are dying from an overdose of either prescription drugs or heroin. And what I was doing was going around to synagogues, to yeshivas, and talking to people to make sure that they understood that that danger is out there.
Now, do they want to talk about it? Is this something that's a taboo subject where they'd
Well,
rather
no.
not?
What happened was the yeshiva principals didn't believe that these things were happening until they started seeing it themselves. We would talk to parents, we would have town hall meetings, let them know that these things were happening, and then all of a sudden they would hear about funerals that were happening in the community, that these things were really real,
Yeah.
and that it was happening right in our community.
Because-
So I am working with Jewish organizations to get the word out. The same thing in the Russian-speaking community. We do radio shows in Russian. I don't, but people on there are actually speaking about it, letting parents and grandparents know this is what you should be looking at.
Is this
out
where
for.
you bring Alec Brokrasny in for as your aide to
well,
interpret?
No,
and
what
your
we do-
duo?
well, Alec is very helpful. So, but we do. It's a very serious issue, and we want to talk to people where they are, and that's why we have organizations that come up who have Russian-speaking people, and we do this in the Sephardic community, the Orthodox community. We talk about it as much as
The
possible.
reason I ask you, are they receptive, is because when the AIDS epidemic was at its height, the Jewish or the observant Jewish community did not believe that AIDS was in their community, and they didn't want counselors or anyone to talk to the kids about this. They wanted, even the parents, and now they realized that it was their biggest issue in the major areas around Brooklyn. So I guess it's stemmed the tide a little bit, but I remember Jerry Nadler, the congressman who represents like Manhattan all the way into Brooklyn and
At that
Crown
time,
Heights.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, he was
He
saying
went into
that,
Brighton Beach, Coney Island, Brighton
Yeah.
Beach. But
Huge
this
district,
is
but-
different. This is very different. This is something that is happening more and more. People are hearing about it on a daily basis. The funerals that I've gone to in the Orthodox community has been
So they're
enormous.
receptive to your message of, say no to drugs. I mean, they're...
Well, it's more than just saying no. You're trying not only to get the kids to say no, but you want the parents to know to go through their medicine cabinet and get rid of those pills and to understand that there's a larger problem that we have to look at.
What about the casino issue and problem gambling? I mean, that's something you've been focused on as well in your role as chair.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was something that in the Orthodox community as well, there was talk of having it in Coney Island. And that was something that the community was against. And I represent my district, I think, very well, and fought that, which was different than dealing with the gambling issues. In the committee, we talk about the fact, when I was named chair of the committee, I called up a friend of mine who runs an organization called SAFE. His name is Ike Dweck, and it's a Sephardic organization. And I said, I've just been named chair of the committee. I need your help. I said, tell me about it. He says, come to my office tonight at 8 o'clock. Came to his office, brought me into a room, and there was a group of 30 people, men, women, people with payas, black, green, yellow people. It was amazing. And he just brought me into a Gamblers Anonymous meeting. All these people had gambling issues. Certain people there had lost their homes to gambling, lost their life savings. And in the next room were spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, on how to deal with a spouse who had or someone who had a gambling issue. So it's a very big issue. These are all issues. These are all issues that affect every single community in New York State.
So how did you vote when the constitutional amendment came up for these casinos flourishing around the state?
I'm in favor of casinos. I have absolutely no problem with building casinos, but at the same time, we have to make sure that there's enough money, and that's why for every casino, for every machine that's built in the casinos that have been chosen, whether it's a table or a machine, $500 is put aside so that money goes towards prevention and treatment programs.
And who puts that money, that $500?
The owner of the
casino
casinos.
Owner?
Yes. And we have programs in the casinos. and we teach, and there's an organization that goes around and teaches the dealers and the people who work there how to look out for problem gamblers and what to do.
Right. It's interesting. Well, Mark's bringing up an important point. We're on the Jewish view and, Orthodox Judaism. Many times, again, I'm, rabbi, so I am a counselor to people and I know the issues. And sometimes it is frustrating, and I'm glad you're dealing with it, like, alcoholism. Jews aren't alcoholics or drug abusers. No, that's not us. That's not our community or gambling.
Well, look, Kiddush clubs. For example, Kiddush clubs are a very big issue where kids will go around from Kiddush to Kiddush on Shabbos and just keep drinking shots. And then before Mincha, you're going to find a lot of kids just sleeping in the basement because they drank so much. And a lot of shuls have responded by cutting out alcohol completely.
Well, I know in Lawrence, Long Island, they actually cater Kiddush Club. I mean, it's like they get overboard in Lawrence, Long Island, but they have, in Brooklyn, obviously, and up here in Albany too, they have, alcohol's a big part of Kiddush Club.
Yes, well, we make sure. The thing is, if you're going to have a Kiddush Club, just be aware that there are kids who are going from shul to shul just to drink. Okay,
and now the other committees that I think that you're on, if I have it right, is Codes, Environmental Conservation, Health, and Insurance. And now they said steering committee? Is there a steering?
Well, there was a steering committee, and I think that's being revamped by Speaker Hasty.
And how do you like the speaker? Is he going to be good for the Jewish community?
I think he's going to be terrific for New York State.
And the Jewish community?
And the Jewish community, yes. He's been very receptive from day one.
You were friends
I came in with him.
Before,
You were in the same class?
We came in together.
In 2000?
Yes.
Okay. And that brings me to my next segue, is that you succeeded your wife, who served 20 months or so in the legislature, less than a term, and she had passed away from cancer. Can you tell us how, what happened and how long when she was diagnosed and that sort of thing?
Well, when she was elected in '98, the day after her election, she was diagnosed with colon cancer and had surgery, immediately thereafter, and was told that she had stage 4 and that she would have less than 2 years to live.
Oh.
And it was her decision that she was going to be the best assembly member she could be, and worked very, very hard to make sure she could do that.
How long were you married to her? You have 2 children with her.
Well, no, she had 2 children.
She had
from,
2 children,
yes,
previous
from a
marriage.
previous marriage, yes.
Okay.
But it was at the time that I was the director of intergovernmental for the New York City Housing Authority, so my job was up in Albany. So it was just b'shert that I would have to come up to Albany, and I would have, that I would be able to drive her up and down, and
That was
it worked out very well.
Being that caretaker role.
It worked out very well, and she was very, very as active as she possibly could. I mean, she would, she attended session and committees and was very involved, and she needed an afternoon nap, and so I would, take her to the hotel, and then she would take a quick nap and then get ready for whatever she had to do in the evening.
How long were you married to her for?
Well, we were married for about 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always too short.
Yeah.
I mean, and she was of Egyptian descent.
Yeah, she was, as we talked about.
And she's the first Sephardic Jew elected to the state legislature.
That is correct.
Wow.
Her family is from Egypt, and from Egypt they moved to Paris and to France when Nasser took over and took over all the businesses and kicked all the Jews out of Egypt.
And then, wow, that was b'shert. She got to meet you, and you were married, and that was terrific. And now you're on your second marriage. How is it that how's the dating and being an assemblyman and being able to date, and how does that juggling act go?
You do what you have to do.
You do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're married to Vilma Huertas?
Yes. Yes, I'm very lucky. She's a terrific person.
With
yes.
the New York City Housing Authority,
Yes.
she's the secretary to the board.
Yes, correct.
So she's got a high-level position.
Yes.
A friend of my family's was Norman Parness.
Oh, I know New. Yeah,
and
of course.
He got me my first summer job working for NYCHA.
Really?
Before they had computers. And my summer project was to alphabetize these huge number of Section 8 housing cards that they had on my desk that no one wanted to alphabetize.
Yeah, well, thank goodness they use a computer now.
Well, they would just, so I alphabetized the cards in like 3 or 4 days. And this was supposed to be the whole summer.
Right.
So they had nothing else for me to do. And I'll tell you something, when I was there, I wasn't, I was like paying union dues, but you got to work 14 weeks before you can be in the union. My job was 13 weeks. I never got those dues back.
That's right. Or talk to the chair of the government employees, Mr. Abadi.
But you're talking about his wife, but you have your interesting story also, or maybe your bio from your parents. Tell us a little bit about, your background.
Well, my parents are Holocaust survivors. My father passed away a year ago. He was 89 years old. But my mom and dad were from Dęblin, Poland. And in 1939, the Nazis took them into the ghetto, the Dęblin ghetto. And then they were taken to the Częstochowa slave labor camp. And they were together during that whole time. And in 1945, when they were liberated, they got married. So I grew up, So I grew up as a son.
5
Yes,
years
yeah.
in the
It was
concentration
6. I mean, it was a total of 6 years, from
That's
39 to
incredible.
45, and I grew up always asking my mother, and I knew I had to ask my mother to tell me a story. I always wanted to hear a story. Growing up, I wanted to know what it was like for them. So my mother would tell me a different story every single night. My father told me one story. I'll never forget that, when he saw his sister killed by the Nazis. And it was just so horrible for him and so upsetting that he just broke down and could never tell me another story.
How was she killed? In what way?
She was on the back. No. She was. No, it was more violent than that. She was. They were working in the field, at the end of the day, they would pick up the so-called prisoners, the people working in the fields, to take them back to the barracks. And they picked up my aunt, and she was alone in like an open pickup truck. And what the driver was doing was going back and forth. He would go forward very quickly to see if he can get her to jerk, and he would go forward and back, and he would do this for a while, to the point where my aunt fell off the truck, and the driver, the Nazi, continued to go forward and backward, but this time over her body. And this was something that my father was watching and could do nothing about. So once he relayed that story, that was it. But
That's the only story you got.
it was a terrible story, but it's something that left something on me, to the point where now I know and I grew up as a greener, as we say. I am
In America.
Yeah. I am a child of Holocaust survivors, and my mother would tell me stories and say to me, "You have to promise me one thing, that you would tell your children."
Can you tell us? Can you relay a story to us from
Well,
your mother,
it's
your
that
mother
kind,
told
you know,
or-
it's that kind of story of you know, or for example, her father, somebody by the name of Shmuel, killed a Nazi
Really?
in the camp, and they took out all the Shmuels that they could find. My father was taken out. It was somehow my grandfather, my mother's father, hid my father in his barrack so that he wouldn't be taken, and all the Shmuels that were there were all killed. I mean, it was those kinds of stories that leave an impact. And once I became the Assemblyman, I had not only an opportunity to tell my children, but to tell the children of my district. So that's why I have an annual event, an annual Holocaust event, where we get all the private schools as well as public schools to get involved in the projects, to do essays and media events and projects on it. And I do one big event
Is it
each year.
around Holocaust Remembrance Day?
Yes.
Is it somewhere
Yes.
around that time?
Yes. And it's really very important. And I go around, and there's an organization called World Without Nazism that I go with, and I've spoken in Moscow, and I've spoken in Latvia on the day that Latvians dress up in their Nazi uniforms that they still carry, that they still have, and talk about my father, and I talk about my mother. And the greatest thrill my father ever had was when I told him I was going to Berlin to talk about him. It's just something that meant a lot.
And your mom, is she still with
Yes,
us?
my mom, God bless her. Yeah, she's going to be 89 in 2 weeks.
All right. Well, wish her a happy birthday.
And I certainly will.
Do you see the number on
No,
her?
she was in a slave labor camp. She was not. She was not in one of the major camps like Auschwitz.
Did your father
But
have a
no, they
number?
were in the same slave labor camps. But I am going to cross a major issue off my bucket list this summer, and I will be going to Demblin, to my parents' hometown, going to Krakow and Auschwitz, and as well as to Warsaw to see the new Jewish museum there. But I always wanted to go back with my parents. My father said yes.
Are you taking
He
your mother?
wanted to go. My mother said no. She never wanted to go. And then the time that my mother finally agreed, that's when my father got sick and we couldn't go. But I'm still going to do it.
Well, don't just take pictures, take moving pictures.
Yes, I do that.
You know,
I'm the videographer.
Okay, well that's good to know. And
Excellent.
what about this? So you really say that there's a need for increased vigilance to deal with this continuing threat of Nazism. You still say that it's a
It
continuing
exists.
threat. Well, what we've seen in Paris, what we've seen in Europe, throughout Europe.
Yes. And that's why concerned about the issue of anti-Semitism, not only in Paris or Greece or wherever, but right here in the United States.
You know, like that, my parents came from Europe, but in any case, that they didn't go through a Holocaust. But when I was young, we were just thinking, well, we're in America now, and we would never see such a thing. And, time goes by, and anti-Semitism's on the rise right now.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to let the audience know that you have an MSW, Master's in Social Work,
Yes.
and from Adelphi University,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a law degree from Brooklyn Law School.
Yes, I do.
So, are you a practicing lawyer?
No, I'm a full-time legislator
Okay.
and always have been.
You got it. You don't have to practice because you got it right already.
That's good.
You're perfect.
Well, certainly far from perfect, but
And
I
law.
just felt it's very interesting. I became a social worker. It was at the time that it was in the 70s, and it was a time that was going on in the country where I wanted to be very active. I was very active in community organizing, and that was my field of study. And later on, I was, as a matter of fact, dating Lena at that point. I was accepted to law school. So I remember calling her up, and I said, "Bubba, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to law school." So she says, "Oh, now you'll be a somebody."
But I'll tell you, the MSW is probably doing you very well as the chair of this committee on alcoholism and substance abuse.
Well, it is. And now with the new committee also, Speaker Hasty has made me the chair of the Committee on Aging.
Oh, okay. So you're not chair of this alcoholism.
No, I'm now
Aging.
for the last 4 weeks.
Oh.
Chair of Aging.
Okay, you got to update your website, your Assembly website. Okay.
Yes, I guess I do. So
That's because your area has a lot of seniors. Is that kind of the reason, or like Mark said, because you have an MSW, you can
it could
deal
be.
with it?
But
it
aging
could be
is
men.
usually given. The committee is usually given to a freshman or
No,
some.
never. No, never. It's a committee that now, it's amazing, has one of the largest number of members on.
Really?
There are 28 people on that committee.
Okay.
It's senior members are given the aging
Really?
committee.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So, did any of these other committees that I mentioned change, or
No, they
codes and
didn't.
Incon? No. Okay.
No.
So just
No.
alcoholism changed. Okay.
Right.
Well,
But
maybe-
still very active. I think it's it's still an issue that I'm going to continue to be active in. It's important for my district. It's important for all
Well, I have
communities
to-
in New York
I have
State.
to tell you a story that I really wanted to mention to you, but I didn't want to take up your time. I had a friend whose father was a doctor, and in Mill Basin in Brooklyn, and his father had a heart condition, heart attack, and all that, and had to be convalescing in his home. So every doctor has these prescription drugs that are, you have to keep track of the use of all these drugs. So he brought them home, and he put them in the shed up in the back there. Well, his son found them, and instead of taking just 1 or 2 tablets, because they had to count them, he took a bottle, figuring, we miscounted a whole bottle. And he started selling them and taking them himself.
Yes.
And I spent probably a good 15 years trying to get him off drugs, and now he's back at home and he's doing well. And he graduated from college, and
That's great.
he's back on the track, on a good
treatment,
track. So
treatment is very,
it's a
very important.
very condensed story.
We have only 1 minute left. What are the major issues with aging, since this is maybe you're only just started it?
Well, no, there's 2 major issues that I've identified in the short period of time, and that is, since we have an increased number of people who are aging in our state, the issues of Alzheimer's and dementia are enormous, and the issue of elder abuse is very big. You think of elder abuse as an issue of maybe a husband beating up a spouse beating up a spouse, but it's financial exploitation where the children are abusing
Well, we
their
saw-
parents for money.
We saw that with the Astor case. It's
Yeah.
not. It's even the wealthy.
Yes.
I mean, we've seen that in so many
Yeah.
stories. And you're 61 years old.
Yes.
So you're not a senior yet.
Yeah,
You're getting
well,
there.
it's interesting that there are just so many issues that affect every single community.
Yes.
And it's important that we deal with it. And
Okay.
those are two big issues that I'm certainly going to concentrate on.
Well, I wish you so much success. I really do. I've been a big fan of yours, and I really
you very
think that
much.
you're a great legislator, one of the
Thank you.
good guys, and maybe you should be. People should emulate your what you've been doing. So,
Thank you
very
for
much.
being on the
I
Jewish
appreciate
View,
it.
and keep going with your good work, like Mark says, and do it with good health.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Take
Thank you
care.
very much.